Hey guys, it's Libby, and today I am reviewing Midwinterblood by Marcus Sedgwick. Marcus Sedgwick has written a number of other things, but this is the first book of his that I have read. It's actually, I guess, the theme for these sort of 3 book reviews that I'm filming all in a row. If you missed the previous 2, they were God Help the Child by Toni Morrison and Radiance by Catherine M. Valente. All 3 people who have quite a backlist, but are new to me. So I read this recently during Dewey's 24-hour readathon. I got through it all in one sitting. It is quite good for that. It's not too long, and it comes in 7 quite distinct parts. The inspiration for this novel was a painting called Midwinterblood. I'm going to show it to you now, but warning, penis, if this is a problem, cover your eyes. It was painted in the early 20th century by a Swedish painter named Carl Larsson, and it's quite controversial because it's depicting human sacrifice. Okay, nudity is gone, you're safe now. So the events surrounding the scene that this painting depicts are in part 7, which is just called Midwinterblood. The previous 6 parts are, well, they start in the year 2073, and then we work our way back in time to get to this event. And at least on the surface of it, it's a sort of reincarnation story. The figures of the king, who's the one who's about to be sacrificed, and the priest, you may have noticed him in the white with his arms raised in the center, and then the queen, who's in green over in the corner and is huddled up crying. They sort of appear over and over again. There is an interview with the author in the back of mine, and one of the questions that he was asked was, like, do you believe in reincarnation, basically? And he said, actually, no. I think he wants us to read this not as these actual people are being reincarnated, but that, like, there are many possible lives that we could have lived. Like when you sit on the train and you look at the person across from you, you're like, what if I had been him, or something like that. I'm not totally sure that I bought that you could read it that way, but I'm willing to read a story that, you know, involves reincarnation. It is quite a useful plot device. So these stories all take place on the same isolated island, presumably part of Sweden, and they're focused around sacrificing yourself for someone else. Sometimes, like, physically, they put you down on the altar and slit your throat, and sometimes metaphorically. And what Marcus Sedgwick did that is a bit different than expectations is that the 2 people, Merle and Eric, are not romantically involved in each story. They have different relationships in different ones. So in one, she is his mother, and in one they don't actually meet. He just meets her dad and sees a picture of her. And so that helps it feel like way less samey, which it could have done. So there were 2 main problems that I had with this. One is pretty much confined to part 1, and the second one is pretty much confined to part 7. And all the stuff in the middle was great. So part 1, the futuristic one, is Wicker Man. In the author interview, he cited Wicker Man as one of his inspirations, and I'm like, yeah, I can tell. Spoiler alert for Wicker Man, both the 70s film and the more recent Nicolas Cage film. It's not really a spoiler alert for this book because, like, that part only goes up to page 50 or something. In both part 1 of Midwinterblood and Wicker Man, a dude goes to an island that's a little bit off. In this case, he's a journalist who's researching, like, why no one seems to die and why no children are born. That's interesting. So he goes there and everyone's a little bit strange. They're very, like, friendly. They give him a house and they don't ask him to pay anything. They also keep trying to get him to drink some tea, which makes him feel a bit funny afterwards. And there's definitely stuff going on that he doesn't get, and this all builds up to him like discovering an ancient church, religious looking site, and all of this discomfort sort of builds up until it becomes clear that he is going to be a human sacrifice. So like, that is a cool story, but I wish it had been less exactly the same as something that is like pretty famous and that I already knew about. And then in the last story, the one that is set in like ancient, possibly like pre-Norse Sweden, that part really needed to be longer. It's what kicks off like retroactively all of the other stories in this book. And the thing that you're supposed to buy is that our main characters are like really deeply in love, and this power will allow them to reincarnate and fight each other over and over again. But they don't show you this at all. It's all show and not tell. You don't, like, when we meet them, the story takes place over just a couple of days, and they've already been married for years, and they have all these great memories, which we don't get to experience, so like, I don't buy the rest of it. And so I guess it's a good trick if you're going to have that sort of core problem in your book to put it at the end, because I spent the rest of the story, like, if that had been first, if things had been told in chronological order instead of reverse chronological order, I would have spent every subsequent story going like, but yeah, but okay. But with them in this order, I totally dug each individual story as it was going on, and maybe he wanted those to lend force to the final story as opposed to the other way around. Anyway, that part didn't quite work for me, but I did like the first one. I just wish it had been less derivative, and the last one was okay. This book is really hard to assign a genre to. I read pretty eclectically amongst the genres, so if you are like that, you may enjoy getting a little taste of everything. So the genres that are included, the part one, Midsummer Sun, is, I'd call it a thriller. Part two, The Archaeologist, it's contemporary, it's about an archaeologist, it's your basic contemporary story. Bit of thrills going on. Part three, The Airman, is set during World War II. It's historical fiction. Part four, The Painter, is set in 1902, also historical fiction. Part five, The Unquiet Grave, it's in the 1840s and it's gothic, very Wuthering Heights type of feel. Part six is The Vampire. It's about a vampire. That's not a metaphor, and so it's just sort of paranormal horror. He's quite a spooky vampire. It's not fun. And then part seven, Midwinterblood, we're back to thriller. So there you have it, Midwinterblood. My final comment, I think, would be that this cover does not accurately represent this story. This was marketed as a YA book, I think because Marcus Sedgwick's other books are all YA, but it's not really. I mean, there is some graphic violence. There isn't any sex. Can't be showing sex to the children's, but the characters are like usually adults. They're teenagers in like one story, maybe, and it felt like more of an adult story to me. But the marketers went really on board with the classic sad pretty lady in a pretty dress. Yeah, this scene never really happens. I mean, there is a female character. They got that right. I don't think she would ever wear anything like that. There is an altar, and I'm sad that it got hidden behind the award thing. But like these purple flowers, so hard to see. They look like dragon heads, and they are quite important to the story. I don't know why there's all these other white flowers not looking like dragons. There should have been more of the purple ones. I think that there are several cover designs for this book, so like if you don't want to be seen in public reading this, you you have other options. Okay guys, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again soon with my Salt to the Sea review featuring my mom.